Friday night on PJNet Live. We have Refugee in the green room standing by. YouTube stream is live and healthy. Cameras are on. They are aimed and in focus. We will go to the studio in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, good evening and welcome to PJNet Live, and I am just glad to be here. I hope you are too. I'm glad that you're a part of this. We have a lot of volunteers that make this possible, and before we get started, let me point out that all of our guests are basically volunteers that we have, but on Friday nights we have Hazards 4 running the videos in our live venue. Go to patriotjournalist.com and come join us live, especially on Friday night for a relaxing time. I could use a little relaxation. Everything seems to be going wrong. I won't tell you about it, but I'll be thinking about it. And we have taken the PJNet Live studio. I'm going to turn this air down a little bit. Can y'all hear it well? Okay. To the Bayou Country of Louisiana. That is actually a picture of Lake Miccosukee in Jefferson County, Florida, but it looks like Bayou Country in Louisiana. And that is to honor our guest, Refugee, who is coming out of the green room and taking his seat on the throne in front of the aquarium. He must
That's
be
right.
King Trident himself. Doing it, man. Well, Refugee, I can't wait to hear you uncork. We had we have a thunderstorm going on right now, folks, here at the PJNet studio. So if things just go blank, they go blank, and that's kind of what was happening last week. So we've got 2 weeks to unpack here, Refugee. What are you packing?
We got a couple of weeks to unpack, and there's a few different things that I want to talk about tonight. First thing that I want to talk a little bit about, Mark, I don't know how much you've seen with the Project Veritas investigation. They were doing one of their latest little stings, and they were getting inside of, I apologize for being distracted, Mark. What's going on is that my internet is even slower than it usually is. Okay. And so what I am seeing when I'm seeing myself in the camera is so out of time with what I'm saying that it's throwing me for a little bit of a loop. And I'm also not used to seeing myself look quite as sexy as I do right now with the mustache. And that's a little bit what's going on. But Mark, have you followed any parts of the Project Veritas investigation?
Not followed it. I am vaguely aware that they have caught some high-ranking Google people. One of them was like a defector, wasn't he, and appeared anonymously or something.
Yes. They have some people on the inside that have worked with them and have given them some kind of under the wire reports, but they've just also got, Mark, fascinating video, and oh man, I can't believe I don't have my notes with me. I left them somewhere, and I've lost the woman's name over at Google. That's actually the higher up at Google that they were filming. But among the things that she said, Mark, Congress can investigate us all they want to. We're not going to change. We're going to do what's right, and we're going to promote fairness. And we understand that other people will disagree with our definition of fairness, but we're going to promote fairness.
What is their definition of fairness?
Different things with the algorithms this time around to try and keep Donald Trump from getting reelected president. Okay, so it went that far. Okay, it's just like, this isn't conspiracy theory stuff anymore. It's just, okay, right out there, Google doing everything that they possibly can to try and tip the next presidential election away from Donald Trump. Mark, who owns YouTube?
Google.
Exactly. And guess who basically took all of these videos off of YouTube that Project Veritas was putting up? Google. They're just flat out taking it all down as it goes up. So that's something that I wanted to talk about, because we need to be prepared for just how ridiculous it's going to be this time around in 2020. Meanwhile, Twitter is talking about, because they know they can't get away with banning the president of the United States, but they're really disturbed at how good Donald Trump is at Twitter. In fact, you know what the funny thing is, Mark? Donald Trump's the only person who's still good at Twitter.
Yeah.
We used to be great at Twitter. Okay.
Yeah.
Twitter changed their rules. They did things, and we haven't figured it out yet. Okay. But Donald Trump is like the one absolute Twitter master, Twitter guru who just guessed his message out to the country on Twitter. Well, so what Twitter's going to do is they're going into their algorithms, and without shadow banning Donald Trump completely, they're going to basically try to shadow ban those of his tweets that they don't think are meet their standards.
They're going to moderate his tweets and decide rather than shadow ban him as a user. They're going to shadow ban tweet by tweet based on their safety and community standards of fairness and not interfering with the elections like the Russians
Mark,
did.
I think that they're going to have AI that is just purely dedicated to Donald Trump's account.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Not just his tweets running through the same system, but they're basically, they're just going to be totally locked into Donald Trump's Twitter account. And, deciding whether or not they're going to let tweets go through, deciding who they're going to show them to and who they're not going to show them to. That's another thing they can do, Mark.
Yes,
they
absolutely.
can, through the use of artificial intelligence,
say,
you know what? I think that this tweet might hurt Donald Trump with this type of user, but help him with this type of user. So we're not going to show this type of user this tweet, but we're going to show it to this. There might be issues where Christians and civil libertarians tend to disagree. And Trump might say something that the Christians will love, but the civil libertarians will hate. Well, they're going to be showing that tweet to those that their artificial intelligence tells them are civil libertarians, and not showing it to the Christians, and vice versa on different types of tweets.
Right. So we will be getting the information secondhand. We won't see it in real time. We'll have to depend upon those with whom we may not fully agree, let's just put it that way, to tell us what Donald Trump said on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we're going to have to get in touch with some of our libertarian friends and things like that. We do have libertarian friends. I have a strong libertarian streak in me, Mark. It's just that, where I break with the libertarians is libertarians forget that God has rights and that God's rights come before our rights.
It's too bad because the libertarian and conservative camps are they agree on so much, but it breaks down usually on the social issues such as abortion in particular. It's too bad because we could do so much more.
We agree on guns.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of split with the libertarians are all over the place on abortion because it all depends on whether or not they basically accept the science. They're not going to oppose abortion on religious grounds. A libertarian may oppose abortion on libertarian grounds once he accepts the science.
The science, yeah.
That an unborn child is an individual living being. But there's a lot of pressure on them to not do that. Just as there's a streak that I would argue is largely a positive streak in conservative Christians to always say, what would Jesus do? There's a little bit of and I'm sorry if I offend my libertarian brothers and sisters here, but there's a little bit of a streak in libertarians to say, well, what's the most fun or what's the easiest?
Yeah.
Okay. There just is. Okay. They have that streak about them. What's the most fun? What's the easiest? Okay.
Right. Well,
and it
to
ain't
Google
about easy.
And YouTube. What's kind of what I'm observing is they are no longer denying or remaining silent on the accusation they are now being very forthright and saying, yes, we're going to reduce the visibility of certain tweets from Donald Trump. I find it incredibly odd. They are defiant, okay, in their testimony, saying you can make all the rules you want, but we're committed to what we're doing in the interest of, now get this, they claim the moral high ground based on fairness. Now, I am perplexed because it seems to me that the rage was the narrative that was drummed by the media for years and by an investigation for years and millions of our dollars, that the Russians interfered somehow with our election by tweeting something or something to that effect. But now Google is just saying that we're going
to interfere with the election.
We're going to interfere with the election in the interest of fairness and safety. Yeah, and safety. I keep hearing this word safety.
Google, one of the reasons that Twitter and Facebook and these social media forums got exemptions from certain laws is because they were considered to be the public square and they weren't going to be censoring anybody.
Right.
Well, they're actively censoring people now, Mark. And, Congress should move to take away their exemptions from all kinds of laws. While Twitter is working, and I might seem I'm getting off here, but it irritates me, and it's related. And I almost don't like to talk about this because I don't like to give people ideas that aren't healthy. But it's important. At the same time as Twitter is doing what they can to censor speech, they're doing absolutely nothing to censor pornography. And not only are they not censoring
never have.
Twitter has become the #1 distributor of pornography to children in the world because so many kids have smartphones now. Twitter requires you have to say you're 18, but that's all you have to do. And 11-year-old kids are getting smartphones and saying they're 18 and starting up Twitter accounts and looking at pornography.
Really? They're that smart, huh?
Like crazy. Like crazy.
Well,
and I want to say it, as much as I hate giving people ideas about what to search for on Twitter, what's more important is to let people know you cannot let your young children have smartphones. Not unless you have gone in at the store and really restricted that smartphone in some kind of a way. It is not safe. It's dangerous, and there's stuff that kids cannot handle that is readily available to them. And and Twitter just won't do anything about that. They just it's amazing, Mark, but they just don't seem to care. I'm going to tell you something interesting, though, Mark. Now, granted, there's some shadow banning going on, but certain types of tweets always get some reaction still. I might not get the 30 retweets that I used to get and the 5 likes and the 8 comments, but I'll get a couple of retweets. I did a tweet about this, and I said @Jack, and I said, when is Twitter going to start trying to keep pornography out of the hands of children instead of censoring political speech? That tweet did not get a retweet. That tweet did not get a like. That tweet did not get a comment. Okay. Now, you tell me that tweet got full access. It did.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, and it's very frustrating for me as a coach. I was having this conversation just last night with another of our collaborators. As a coach, I almost hesitate to say this in a public way. I was on a private conversation, but I might as well share it with you. You got to call a play. The clock's always running. Even during a timeout, the clock's running because the timeout is only for 1 minute. Okay. I sometimes as a coach, you just have to call a play. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm sitting here trying to think of a play to call on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, anything, and I'm really drawing a blank. And this is very uncomfortable for me personally. But
And Mark, let's talk about this. Let's be upfront about this. We're struggling. We're
yes.
struggling with getting views. And right now, the play that we're calling, because we don't know what else to do, is we're pounding the ball up the middle again and again and again,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't know what else to do. Okay, and we know that we were popular on Twitter. We know the types of things that we've done in the past. We know that things have changed now, but we're struggling to make the kind of impact and get the kind of views that we want. And one of the things I'd like to ask people to do, no matter how many, I wish I could say dozens, but let's be honest, no matter how many or how few people look at this, tell us if we suck. Tell us what we could do better. If you came and you watched, tell us why you watched, what you liked, and what you think we can do better to drum up more attention as we try and get the conservative message out and try to affect things. But it is perplexing. One of the things, Mark, that Patriot Journalists Net had going for it is that you had created something unique,
Mm-hmm.
and it was different. And nobody had anything quite like PJNet, with that chat room and with the ability to do the Twitter bombs and the ability to do the rallies and so on and so forth. And Twitter went and changed the rules and kind of took that away.
And I'm trying to be as critical as I can, and setting aside any bias. We had enormous technological leverage. Okay, I mean we had the gun, and
Mm-hmm.
we had a small team, and it was small. I mean, under 50 people. But
Yeah, but
50
we would
people
regularly
could become.
I wish we were getting 25 people today showing
Yeah.
up and piling on and
Well,
sharing the video. And
at that time, there was some events going on out there. The Veritas project had just penetrated Planned Parenthood. That was huge. We had the Ted Cruz campaign. So to some extent, and as a percentage, I would have to say 20 to 40% of the wind in our sails, we didn't have anything to do with. It was popular culture that was driving. But I would have to say it was only 40%. So now, if you assume that has gone to zero, you should still have 50 to 60% of your efficacy out there.
Right.
Well, that is certainly not the case. So then you have to say, well, what's wrong? Well, do we just suck? Well, okay. Well, maybe we do. Okay, but let me tell you this: if you don't like Roger, you very well might like Michelle, and if you don't like Michelle, you might very well like Dale. And if you don't like, these are not the same faces and the same voices and the same personalities. Right. So you could then start to chart. How's Friday night doing versus Wednesday versus Tuesday? You could start doing some metrics and analytics. Well, no, that's not working either, because there's not a good sample.
Your sound, Mark.
Oh my goodness. I am putting sound out. I'm going to just give it a moment to see if it recovers, and if Roger Refugee nods his head. I see he's kind of jittery. So the connection is destabilizing. And you may keep in mind, Refugee, that even though we may not can hear you, I don't
know if you can hear me or not, Mark.
Yes.
But if you can hear me right in the midst of us talking about why we have problems, now, of course, we get the great big technical problem of I can't hear you anymore.
Okay.
And it looks like it may be on my end, because there's even a bigger difference between what I'm seeing on the screen. I'm saying things a good 7-8 seconds probably before I can see my face saying those things on the screen.
Let's do this. If you can hear me, if you'd like to disconnect and reconnect.
I tell you what I'm going to do, Mark. Right now, it's basically impossible for us to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this week's show with a little bit of a monologue, only because of the technical difficulties.
Good idea.
And I'm going to scare you when I first start to go into it, because you hate when I go off on topics that in your mind have nothing to do with anything. You don't like it when I talk about the New Orleans Saints. Mm-hmm. You don't like it when I talk about Drew Brees. And there's a lot of things like that. But I'm going to talk about that fish tank behind me for a minute because there's a message and about what I have learned in the last month in my struggles with this fish tank. Um, One thing that I have learned is that there is so much misinformation out there, and hey, let's tie this into politics. There is so much misinformation out there that it's very, very hard to find out how to do the right thing. Um, you go walking into a Petco and you want to buy a goldfish and you want to put that goldfish into a bowl. And the pimply faced kid at the Petco that's been given no training whatsoever tells you it's cruel to put a goldfish in a bowl. They can't live in a bowl. They need to be in a big pond in a backyard. They're going to die. Okay. And you say, when I was a kid, we had a goldfish in a bowl and he was happy and he lived about 3 or 4 years. And I've seen it work. So now in your mind, this kid is completely 100% wrong. The kid doesn't know enough to give you a comeback. I always heard is that you can't do this. But when you study it, you start to find some things out. Here's the truth. That goldfish that lived for 3 or 4 years when you were a kid, it should have lived for 10. And that goldfish that quote unquote grew to the size of a bowl and it stopped growing, well, its organs didn't stop growing and the organs kept growing inside. And not only did that goldfish die at 3 or 4 years old, but he was uncomfortable for about the last 25% of his life. Okay. Now, if somebody had given you all that information, you would have discounted what you thought you already knew, but they don't give you all that information. So sometimes we think our experience is discounting what somebody's telling us only because they're not telling us enough stuff. And we got to take this into the political world. I've had this problem with the fish where I had a fish that I had for a few years that I really liked. He died, went without a fish for a while. Planned on what I was going to get in the tank, then couldn't find those fish. Fell in love with some fish that I saw in a Petco. And a young guy with no training whatsoever said, yeah, no problem. You can take these fish and put it in your tank at home and everything will be fine. Okay. Well, everything wasn't fine. And people fish started killing each other and all kind of stuff started going on. And so I had to do my research. Mark, I found out something fascinating about these African cichlids were that the Lord had set things up with humans the way he set things up with the blue manganos. One of my problems was I had one male and one female blue mangano. And my male was just beating the crap out of my female constantly to the point that she was about ready to die. Well, once I went and I did my research, I found out that male blue manganos spend about 90% of their time going after females. Okay. So you need to have 3 or 4 with them so that the female fish can handle it. Because if their attention is spread out among 3 or 4 females, it'll work. But and otherwise, it won't, and they'll beat the 1/4 to death. So anyway, Mark's probably tired of me talking about fish. But do your research, folks. You can't just fall in love with something at first sight. Don't even necessarily believe what you see or don't see on Twitter because the artificial intelligence is messing with it. We all have to do our research. We all have to get prepared. And we have to get in there and do our due diligence and do our work and start figuring out how to start calling some better plays. And since I can't hear you anymore, Mark, I don't know what else to do except to maybe kind of tell you later on and wrap things up at this point.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me now, but sounds like you can't. So what we'll do is we'll break away from the green room that is not so green at the moment. And, and there he goes. Well, I'm sorry we had those problems tonight. I really am. But always good to hear from Refugee, and we'll probably pick up next week where we left off tonight. I did hear from Sunbelt Girl today. She is in transit back to home. She stopped off, took a little detour to see a new grandson or something, whatever But Sunbelt Girl will soon be among us, and we are looking forward to that day. And anyway, let me disconnect that because I can hear Refugee very, very well, and it's kind of hard to pay attention to you. All right, listen, tomorrow night, Wild Bill for America will be here. He's here on Saturday nights. Look forward to that. I'm struggling with trying to get all my commitments in a row. I won't bore you with that. I'm just glad that we were able to make it tonight. And Hazards 4 will be taking over the helm here shortly with some music to relax me, and I hope to relax you as well. And we will continue having fun, turning it over to Hazards 4 right here on PJ Net Live.